The alien race known as the Zelenaar had spent centuries searching the universe for evidence of the legendary elder species. They were a young but ambitious race, their civilization only a few 100,000 years old, and yet their technology had allowed them to map and explore vast regions of space. Throughout their expansion, they had uncovered ruins of ancient civilizations, dead worlds where once mighty empires had risen and fallen long before the Zelenaar had developed even the most basic forms of space travel. But there was one mystery that remained unsolved. Every extinct civilization had records of an even older species, a race that had shaped the fate of the galaxy. It was always the same, cryptic references, scattered across the ruins, warning of a race that had been there before them, a force that had shaped and altered the stars themselves. Some called them the architects, others the first ones, but no civilization had ever found definitive proof of who they were. The Zelenaar, after generations of study, finally found their first clue. A distant, nearly forgotten sector of space, located in a spiral arm of the Milky Way, held a planet that showed signs of ancient habitation. The record suggested it had once been home to an advanced race before some catastrophe had nearly wiped them out. The planet was called Earth. As the Zelenaar fleet approached the system, their long-range scans puzzled them. Earth was still inhabited. The species that lived there, called humans, did not appear to be technologically advanced. Compared to the Zelenaar, they were primitive, barely having begun to explore their own solar system. There were no signs of great energy sources, no vast orbital structures, no evidence that they had ever wielded the kind of power the elder race was said to possess. But something was strange. The Zelenaar discovered that the humans had no significant genetic variation from their ancestors, yet their recorded history suggested that their civilization had risen and fallen multiple times. Wars, plagues, disasters, each time humanity was nearly wiped out, they rebuilt. Unlike other civilizations that slowly advanced in an unbroken line, humanity's progress was chaotic, unpredictable. Cities were destroyed, empires collapsed, knowledge was lost and rediscovered, yet they continued. It was as if they had once been great, then fallen, and had spent thousands of years trying to reclaim what was lost. The Zelenaar sent their best scientists and historians to investigate further. They analyzed human biology, language, and the ruins hidden beneath their cities. That was when they made the discovery that changed everything. Human DNA was old. Unbelievably old. Far older than it should have been. In fact, genetic markers showed evidence of extreme longevity in their evolutionary past, traits that had somehow been lost over time. Deep analysis of ancient structures on Earth, places humans themselves did not fully understand, revealed something even more shocking: evidence of construction methods and materials far beyond what humans could replicate today. Some ruins were millions of years old. Not thousands. Millions. The deeper they looked, the more the puzzle fit together. The humans had been here from the beginning. Long before the Zelenaar even had language, long before most other civilizations had evolved, the humans had walked among the stars. They had been the elder race all along. Some catastrophe, some unimaginable event, had shattered their knowledge, reducing them to a primitive state. Perhaps war, perhaps something even worse. Yet unlike other lost civilizations, they had not gone extinct. They had survived, enduring through countless generations, clawing their way back from the brink each time. They had lost everything, over and over, yet each time they rebuilt. They were not just another young race. They were the original survivors of the universe. The Zelenaar knew what this meant. The humans had once been far greater than even the Zelenaar were now. They had wielded the kind of power that shaped the stars. If they had fallen before, it meant there were dangers out there even the Zelenaar could not comprehend. But it also meant something even more terrifying: humanity was recovering. Slowly, painfully, they were reclaiming what had once been theirs. They were expanding again, reaching into space, searching, learning. And if history was any indication, they would not stop. The Zelenaar debated their next move. Some wanted to destroy humanity before they could regain their full power, fearing what would happen when the elder race remembered what they had lost. Others argued that the humans had endured trials that no other race had survived. If they had been the ones to shape the past, then they might be the only ones who could protect the future. In the end, the Zelenaar chose to leave Earth alone. They erased their presence, ensuring humanity never knew they had been watched. They would observe from a distance, waiting to see what humans would become. Because one thing was now certain: the elder race had never disappeared. They had simply forgotten who they were. And soon, they would remember. The galaxy believed the humans were a young, reckless species. They spread fast, expanded into new territories, and had an uncanny ability to adapt. Other civilizations, some millions of years older, saw them as an anomaly: aggressive, unpredictable, and dangerously resourceful. But to the oldest and most advanced races, humanity was little more than an afterthought. An upstart species that had stumbled into the stars too soon. That perception changed when the discovery was made. The Zellari, a species that had dominated the galactic stage for nearly 100,000 years, had long prided themselves on their vast knowledge of history. They had records stretching back before most other species had even evolved. Their archaeologists and researchers traveled across the galaxy, documenting ruins, lost civilizations, and dead worlds. When they came across a seemingly barren planet on the edge of the Sagittarius Arm, they expected to find nothing more than another abandoned rock. What they found instead changed everything. Buried beneath layers of sediment, far below what should have been untouched ground, were the remains of an advanced city, structures taller than anything they had ever seen, walls reinforced with materials they had never encountered, and artifacts that suggested a mastery of physics far beyond what any known civilization had achieved. The deeper they dug, the older the ruins became. Radiometric analysis pushed the timeline back further and further until the numbers became incomprehensible. At first, they assumed a mistake had been made. No civilization should have been capable of such technology that long ago. The ruins predated not only the Zellari but every known species in the galaxy. Then they found the bodies. The skeletal remains were unmistakable, humanoid in structure, matching the physiology of only one known race. The DNA samples confirmed the impossible: the builders of these forgotten cities had been human. Panic spread through the Zellari research teams. If humanity had been this advanced, this powerful, so many millions of years ago, what had happened to them? What disaster had wiped out a civilization so old that even the longest-lived species had never heard of them? The implications were terrifying. The Zellari scholars scrambled to make sense of the discovery. Reports were sent to the highest levels of government. Scientists ran simulations, theorists wrote papers, and historians scoured the ruins for answers. But the more they uncovered, the more the pieces refused to fit. The ruins suggested that these ancient humans had not merely been advanced, they had been the most advanced civilization to ever exist. They had controlled forces beyond anything known to modern physics. Their energy sources defied explanation. The materials they used could withstand pressures and temperatures no modern civilization could replicate. Yet, they had vanished. Not conquered, not slowly decayed, just gone. The realization came slowly, and then all at once, the current era of humans, the ones spreading across the galaxy with reckless ambition, were not the first iteration. They were the last surviving remnant of an empire so vast and ancient that it had been forgotten even by time itself. The evidence was overwhelming. There were ruins hidden beneath Earth's oceans, buried deep beneath the crust, impossible to explain as the work of the modern human civilization. Strange genetic markers in their DNA hinted at engineered origins, sequences that had no logical reason to exist unless placed there by design. Then came the final discovery, the records, ancient archives, stored in crystalline structures resistant to time itself. The language was human, the message was clear: humanity had once ruled the stars. The implications shook the galaxy. Every assumption about human history was wrong. Humanity had not started on Earth, they had ended there. Something had caused them to collapse, to revert to a primitive state, to forget their own history, and despite all the advanced civilizations that had risen since, none had ever reached the heights of that lost empire. Humanity was not a young race. It was the oldest, the original elder species. When the humans themselves were informed, their response was unlike anything the Zelari had expected. They did not express shock or disbelief. Instead, they accepted the information as though it had always been true, as though, somewhere deep in their bones, they had always known. There were hints of their lost past everywhere, myths of golden ages, of great catastrophes, of gods who walked among men, legends of lost continents, forgotten cities, whispers of knowledge that seemed to come from nowhere, stories passed down from the remnants of a civilization that had fallen long before any other had even begun. And then, something even more unsettling happened. Humanity did not fear this revelation. They did not question what it meant. Instead, they embraced it. If they had once ruled the galaxy, then they could do so again. If they had lost everything before, they could reclaim it. It was not a story of tragedy, but of inevitability. The galaxy, for all its arrogance, had seen humans as a species on the rise. Now, they realized their mistake. Humanity had never been rising. They had been waking up. The aliens arrived with confidence, believing themselves the dominant force in the galaxy. They had spent millennia conquering lesser species, bending entire civilizations to their will. They saw themselves as the inevitable rulers of the stars, the peak of evolution. When their deep space probes detected Earth, a planet teeming with intelligent life, they assumed humanity would be no different from the others. At first, their scientists believed they were about to invade a young species, barely stepping into space. Humans had simple space stations, primitive colonies, and technology that seemed centuries behind their own. They expected a swift conquest, but the deeper they dug into Earth's past, the more troubling details they uncovered. The first warning signs came from the ruins, ancient, forgotten structures buried beneath oceans, hidden in deserts, and overgrown by jungles. Some were tens of thousands of years old, others even older, and yet, they carried traces of technology more advanced than what humanity currently possessed. This was impossible. No species develops advanced technology, loses it entirely, and then starts over from scratch. Civilizations collapse, but knowledge always passes on. The aliens had seen it happen in countless worlds. There had to be an explanation, but as they investigated further, unease grew among their ranks. The oldest sites had radiation signatures from weapons that should not have existed on a primitive world. The scars of war stretched across the planet in patterns too precise to be anything but intentional. It became clear, humanity had been here before, not just as a struggling, pre-spaceflight civilization, but as a dominant force. The aliens began searching beyond Earth, digging through ancient signals, lost records drifting in the void. They found traces of human expansion far beyond their current reach, abandoned stations orbiting distant stars, wreckage of warships too advanced to belong to any species but theirs, and in the ruins, inscriptions written in languages that no longer existed, yet undeniably human. The evidence pointed to a singular, terrifying truth: humans had ruled the stars before. They had not been a young species at all, they had been an elder race, one of the first to spread across the galaxy, long before the current empires had even begun. But something had happened, something had erased their dominance, reducing them to near extinction. The aliens searched desperately for an answer. What could have caused such a collapse? Theories formed. A war beyond comprehension? A self-inflicted catastrophe? Something worse? But before they could find definitive answers, they noticed something even more unsettling. Humanity had already begun its return. Despite having no memory of their lost empire, they were expanding again, driven by the same instincts that had once carried them across the galaxy. Their technological progress was accelerating at an unnatural rate. Patterns emerged, patterns that should not exist in a species developing naturally. They were not just advancing, they were remembering. Their past was buried deep in their DNA, in their subconscious, in the myths and stories they told themselves without realizing why. The knowledge they had lost was clawing its way back. In mere centuries, they had gone from scattered tribes to space travelers, and soon, they would rediscover everything that had once made them rulers of the stars. The aliens were horrified. They had seen what elder species could do. They had spent their existence avoiding the remains of the old ones, fearing the possibility of their return. And now, they realized they had made a fatal mistake. They had woken one up. Retreat was the only option. There was no battle they could win, no war they could survive, not against a species that had already conquered the stars once before. Their fleets vanished from Earth's orbit, their research stations abandoned in panic. They erased records, destroyed evidence, hoping humanity would never find out how much had been discovered. But it was too late. The seeds had already been planted. Humanity had always known, in the back of their minds, that they were meant for more. The ruins had not gone unnoticed. The whispers of the past had never truly been silent. The stars were calling them back. And now, nothing could stop them from answering. The aliens fled to the farthest reaches of space, warning others, hoping that distance and time would be enough to save them. But they knew the truth. Humanity had already begun its rise, and one day, the elder race would return to claim what had always been theirs. The discovery began with a simple anomaly. A deep space probe from the Zalari Dominion had been scanning the edges of a barren star system when it detected something impossible: artificial structures on a lifeless world. The Dominion had catalogued thousands of planets, but this one had no known intelligent inhabitants, no signs of industry, no energy signatures. Yet, the ruins stood in defiance of their understanding. The Zalari, a species that had long considered themselves one of the eldest and most advanced in the galaxy, dispatched a fleet to investigate. When their archaeologists landed, they expected to find the remains of some long-dead civilization, perhaps wiped out by war or catastrophe. What they found instead sent waves of unease through the scientific community. The ruins were old, beyond old. Their technology for dating inorganic material struggled to register a number. Carbon dating was useless, for any organic traces had long since turned to dust. The only thing they could determine was that the structures were so ancient that even the rock they stood on had eroded around them. The Zalari had records stretching back nearly 1 million years, and yet, These ruins were older than that, by an order of magnitude. The team excavated deeper, uncovering symbols and markings unlike anything in their vast archives. It was not until they decoded a series of inscriptions carved into the walls of what seemed to be an ancient temple that the true horror of their discovery dawned upon them. The language was human. Humans were a young species, or so the galaxy had believed. They had only just begun expanding beyond their home system a few thousand years ago, barely making their presence known among the greater empires. Their history was filled with wars, mistakes, and rapid technological jumps that seemed to defy normal evolutionary progress. The galactic community had always assumed they were simply fast learners, an anomaly among the stars. But the ruins told another story. These humans had not been primitive. They had been gods of their time, wielding knowledge and power beyond anything the Zalari could comprehend. The inscriptions detailed their command over science, their dominion over entire star clusters, their cities stretching across the fabric of space itself. They had been the first, the true elder race of the galaxy. And then, they vanished. No records remained of their downfall, no clues as to why an empire that had conquered the stars had left nothing behind but dust-covered ruins. The Zalari found themselves sifting through the remnants of a civilization so advanced that even their ruins were beyond modern comprehension. They uncovered vast underground vaults containing machines that had not decayed despite the passage of millions of years. Some of these devices emitted a hum, still active, still functional, and yet, the knowledge of how they worked had been lost to time. The implications shattered the very foundation of galactic history. Humans were not new arrivals, they were returning home. Their current civilization, the one known to the galactic community, was merely a shadow of what they had once been. A species that had once stood at the pinnacle of creation had somehow fallen into darkness, reduced to rediscovering their own achievements as if they were seeing them for the first time. The Zalari debated what to do with this information. Some argued for secrecy, fearing what would happen if modern humans learned of their past. Others believed the truth belonged to them, that they had a right to reclaim what was theirs. The debates raged, but one thing became clear: if humans were to learn the truth, if they were to rediscover what they had once been, then nothing in the galaxy would remain the same. But the greatest fear of all was that if humans had fallen once, they could fall again, and if that happened, it would not just be them who vanished this time. The Zalari left the ruins untouched, their scientists forbidden from further excavation. They erased their findings from official records, hoping to bury the truth. But rumors spread, whispers of an ancient power, of a forgotten empire waiting to be awakened. The question remained, had humanity truly forgotten what it was? Or was something, somewhere, waiting for them to remember? And if they did, what would become of the galaxy that had taken their place?